A decade ago, when no one knew anything about Islam, and Muslims were telling the world that Muhammad was the greatest man of all time, we told the world that Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl. How did Muslims respond? Stop lying! Everyone knows that Aisha was 18 years old when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had sex with her. We can prove it by cutting and pasting an article by one of the biggest liars of all time. But we kept going. We showed that Islam's most trusted sources agree unanimously that Muhammad had sex with a 9-year-old girl. We showed that the Muslims who were claiming that Aisha was older were lying. Even Muslim scholars had to tell Muslims to stop lying about this.
Don't apologize for the truth and don't distort the truth. There are Muslims that try to deny this. Oh, he didn't marry Aisha as a young girl. Ya akhi, look, that's not the way forward. We don't lie for the sake of our religion. Astaghfirullah. We have the truth. We're not going to cover up the truth if people find it embarrassing. This is the reality. Deal with it.
After years of us throwing their own sources in their faces, Muslims finally had to admit, well, okay, so Aisha was 9 years old when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ climbed on top of her. So what? At least she had reached puberty. And now we're exposing that lie in two ways. First, we show from the hadith that Aisha hadn't reached puberty. Second, we show that the Quran itself allows men to marry, have sex with, and divorce girls all before they've reached the age of puberty. How do Muslims respond when we show them that the Quran allows men to have sex with prepubescent girls? Stop lying! When it refers to girls who don't have a menstrual cycle, it means women who have some medical problem, not girls who haven't reached puberty. So we go to their greatest commentators and to the historical background of Surah 65 verse 4, and we show that it's indisputably referring to prepubescent girls. Now we get to the latest Muslim response. Muslims are now admitting that Surah 65 verse 4 of the Quran does indeed allow men to marry and divorce prepubescent girls. But where does it say that the men have sex with the prepubescent girls? Perhaps the men marry the girls before they reach puberty, but then the men wait until the girls reach puberty before having sex with them. Yeah, that's our new response. I'm a Muslim. I've been watching your vids for a while, and you successfully showed that marriage with a prepubescent girl is permitted. You haven't showed that sex with a prepubescent is permitted. Surah At-Talaq, chapter 65, verse 4, doesn't mention sex. It's about divorce. I have yet to find a passage in Quran or Sunnah that allows me to penetrate a 5-year-old girl. Show now. Where in Quran or Sunnah is sex with prepubescent girl allowed? I only see divorce and marriage is allowed. Where? Do I need a microscope to find the passage, Mr. David? That's Dr. David, BFP to you. BFP stands for Breaker of False Prophets. But this is a reasonable question. We know that the Quran allows marriage to prepubescent girls and divorce from prepubescent girls, but how do we know it allows sex with prepubescent girls, apart from Muhammad himself having sex with a prepubescent girl? Everyone comes to the answer man. Let's review Surah 65, verse 4, which is giving some rules about divorce. If a man is going to divorce his wife, he's supposed to wait a certain amount of time. The waiting period is called the iddah. The verse reads, "And those of your women as have passed the age of monthly courses, for them the iddah, prescribed period, if you have doubt about their periods, is 3 months. And for those who have no courses, i.e. they are still immature, their iddah, prescribed period, is 3 months likewise, except in case of death. And for those who are pregnant, whether they are divorced or their husbands are dead, their iddah, prescribed period, is until they lay down their burden. And whosoever fears Allah and keeps his duty to him, he will make his matter easy for him." In a previous video, the link is in the description box, we went through various Muslim commentaries, and they all agree that this part, and for those who have no courses, i.e. they are still immature, their iddah, prescribed period, is 3 months likewise, is referring to girls who haven't reached puberty. They're too young to have a monthly menstrual cycle. So, Muslim men are allowed to divorce girls who are too young to have a monthly menstrual cycle. Obviously, if Muslim men are allowed to divorce prepubescent girls, they're allowed to marry prepubescent girls. As a rule, you can't divorce them unless you've married them. But how do we know that the men had sex with the prepubescent girls? For the answer to this question, we turn to the most disgusting chapter in the Quran, Surah 33. Surah 33 is the chapter where Allah orders Muhammad to marry the wife of his own adopted son. It's the chapter where Allah abolishes adoption, one of the most humane practices in human history, in order to justify Muhammad's marriage to the wife of his own adopted son. It's the chapter where Allah tells Muhammad that he, and he alone, can break the four-wife limit. It's the chapter that originally included the commands to Muslim women to breastfeed adult men. In case you don't know what that's about, let me clarify. If a man and a woman who aren't married and aren't related have to be around each other for some reason, for instance, if the man works for the woman, how can the woman's husband make sure that his wife isn't committing adultery? Muhammad's followers brought this issue to him, and Allah revealed the answer. The woman should simply breastfeed the man 10 times. That way, he'll be like her son, and she'll be like his mother, so there won't be any sexual attraction between them. Is that the stupidest revelation in any religion ever? Possibly. Muhammad's wives hated that revelation, and they had the only copy. So as soon as Muhammad died, they made sure that a sheep conveniently ate that part of Surah 33. And they didn't stop there. According to Aisha, more than 100 verses were lost from Surah 33 alone. Very strange for a book that's been perfectly preserved. Anyway, also in Surah 33, we have the answer to the question about whether Surah 65 verse 4 is talking about sex with prepubescent girls. Surah 33 verse 49. O you who believe, when you marry believing women, and then divorce them before you have sexual intercourse with them, no iddah, divorce prescribed period, see Surah 65 verse 4, have you to count in respect of them. So give them a present and set them free, i.e. divorce, in a handsome manner. Did you catch that? If you marry a woman and you divorce her before having sexual intercourse with her, there's no iddah, no waiting period. If you haven't had sex with your wife and you divorce her, there's no iddah. There is no iddah unless you put it in her. But Surah 65 verse 4 says that the iddah for a prepubescent girl is 3 months. Now if there's no iddah unless you've had sex, and there is an iddah for a prepubescent girl, what does that mean? Premise 1. If there's an iddah, then the husband has had sex with his wife. Premise 2. There's an iddah. What conclusion can we draw? Come on, Muslims, you can get this. This is the most basic argument form there is. It's called modus ponens. If A, then B. A, therefore B. If there's an iddah, then the husband has had sex with his wife. There's an iddah. Conclusion, therefore the husband has had sex with his wife. Since Surah 65 verse 4 of the Quran allows men to divorce prepubescent girls, it also allows men to marry prepubescent girls. And since the Quran gives the iddah for prepubescent girls, and there's no iddah unless their husbands have had sex with them, the Quran allows grown men to have sex with prepubescent girls. Notice, ladies and gentlemen, that we're going through every possible Muslim defense of Muhammad on this issue. If you learn how to use the passages about the age of Aisha, and you learn how to show that she hadn't reached puberty, and you learn how to show that the Quran allows sex with prepubescent girls, you can destroy the claim that Muhammad was the greatest man who ever lived. And since Muslims are convinced that Muhammad was the greatest man who ever lived, you'll be shattering their confidence in their religion.